At the time of 1991 Gulf War, USSR had a lot of different tank variants. I will start from the worst ones that are considered modern for the time, because some small, irrelevant numbers of older tanks were also used in service. Let's start with T-72B, which was the most common tank in Russia at the time. Just like T-72M used by Iraq, it is a tank from T-72 family. But T-72M is literally the same tank as much older T-72A tank, which was phased out of service in Russia. In comparison to T-72M, it had much better armor. Unlike simple cavity filled with quartz in T-72M, the T-72B featured way more advanced armor called reflecting plates, which is more comparable to Chobham armor and much more effective, some 25% more effective. On top of which, it had Contact 1 explosive reactive armor, which further enhanced the protection against hollow charge munitions. It had slightly improved fire control system with lead calculation. So, how would it compare to M1A1HA used in Gulf War? Well, it would probably still get penetrated at distances of 2 kilometers or less, but over that it would be hard to penetrate it. It still lacked thermal imager, which would give Abrams an advantage, since there are more chances Abrams crew will notice T-72B before they spot them, and thus will be the first to take a shot. And since the spotting range of the thermal imagers at the time was around 2 kilometers, the T-72B tanks would still go out in flames. But T-72B wouldn't go out without a fight. With latest ammunition such as 3BM32 Vant and 3BM42 Mango, it would be able to penetrate the hull of M1A1HA, but the turret would be a tough nut to crack because of depleted uranium inserts. T-72B also had the ability to fire ATGMs, but the Invar ATGM that had more range than APVSDS just got introduced at the time, therefore it wouldn't be available in big numbers, and the tanks would mostly have access to Reflex, which had 4 kilometers range. So the M1A1 would still emerge victorious. Next up would be the T-80BV tank. There were a lot of them as well, but it wasn't very much different in performance compared to T-72B. It had better fire control system with automatic lead and more powerful 1100 horsepower gas turbine engine, compared to 840 horsepower diesel of T-72B. Other than that, their performance would be rather similar, since the armor protection is comparable. T-64BV would also be comparable to the previously mentioned tanks, so there is no point to dive into the details. Now onto the real deal, the T-72B Model 1989, or T-72BM as some tend to call it. The tank featured improved Contact 5 heavy explosive reactive armor that can reduce penetration of APVSDS projectiles by some 20%, which would mean that it couldn't be penetrated by M829A1 Silver Bullet fired from Abrams. Since the base armor of T-72B is rated 530mm against APVSDS, and adding Contact 5 would improve the armor to around 670mm, where M829A1 had 570mm penetration at 2 km and 670mm only at point blank. And in an open desert, that would mean T-72BM would have big advantage in protection. Not to mention that T-72BM got much improved hull armor compared to T-72B, which also had it rated at around 530mm. So the hull protection would be even better than the one on the turret. Other than that, the fire control system and firepower is comparable to already mentioned tanks. Which would mean that, since the armor is greatly improved, T-72BM could pose a lot of issues for M1A1HA. Keep in mind, T-72BM still doesn't have a thermal imager, but the M829A1 still wouldn't be able to penetrate it at normal combat ranges. Therefore, even if Abrams fired the shot first, T-72BM could still fire back. Of course, the tank is not covered in Contact 5 entirely, so it would still be possible to penetrate some spots on the tank. This one is tough to decide. Next on the list is the T-80U tank. Just like T-72BM, it received Contact 5 explosive reactive armor, and again the armor would be comparable to the one of T-72BM. Therefore, Abrams wouldn't be able to penetrate T-80U, so the story would be pretty much the same with T-72BM. Another tank to look at would be the T-80UD tank. It was fairly similar to T-80U but with diesel engine and even better armor protection, which incorporated a different composite, which included strong ceramics and had the RHA equivalence increased by around 15% compared to TATU, which would mean that even without contact 5, it would be a tough nut to crack, especially at the distances the tanks engaged each other in Gulf War. I would say this one would provide quite a challenge, especially because the armor would be close to impossible to penetrate for the Abrams, and because there were 500 of them. And now the technological wonder of USSR, the T-80UK tank, that appeared at the same year Gulf War started. The tank greatly differs from already mentioned tanks by the fact that it now incorporates a GAVA-2 thermal imaging system, which, according to multiple sources, was slightly superior to thermal sight of M1A1 tanks, and no wonder since it appeared more than 10 years later. The tank also featured brand new SORA-1 active protection system, which also has laser warning receivers. Which would mean when the tank is being glazed, the crew is warned, so even if you weren't spotted beforehand, now you are. The tank omits the infrared searchlight since it has thermal, and therefore Contact 5 can cover more area on the turret, reducing the amount of weak spots. The tank was by all aspects superior to M1A1HA. The firepower is the same as other tanks, so it would still penetrate only the hull, and with SORA-1 and Contact 5, the defensive capabilities outmatch ones of Abrams by far. It is superior, but it just appeared at the time. You would get a handful of those at best, where they would best be used as spotting tanks alongside other TATU tanks, which was indeed their intended role since the K in the name stands for Komandny, which translates to command tank. If a division of M1A1HA tanks face a division of 2 to 3 TATU-K tanks, together with other TATU or TATU-D tanks by their side, I think that would be one hell of a mess where many factors could decide the winner. And that is it. Thanks for watching. If you like my channel and the content I'm producing, please consider supporting me on Patreon. It would really mean a lot. If you have some questions or just want to chat, join my Discord server, and I will see you all in the next video. Have a nice day.